Habeas corpus. This is where we don't think a lot about this in terms of in terms of our everyday justice system because it's so automatic. Is basically because we've incorporated it into our justice system. Basically, if police arrest someone, they can't, or anybody is detained, they have to have a reason. There can't just be an unlawful detention of people in our justice system, constitutional justice system. Now, sometimes this gets suspended in terms of cases of prisoners of war, where we declare people to be enemies. A good example of this was, during 9/11 and after 9/11, excuse me, when we were detaining potential terrorist suspects. Now, some of the American laws were suspended, and we took the rules of wartime law, where we could take people as enemies of the state and to make them war prisoners, and not try them in our court system. This was seen as a little bit controversial, the detainment of potential terrorist suspects at Guantanamo Bay. But in terms of the American justice system, the writ of habeas corpus is basically saying it literally means produce the body. So in other words, when you're charged with something, when you're charged with a crime, you have to, usually it's within 24 hours, you're arraigned in a court, and the charges are formally presented to you, and you have options: guilty, not guilty, reason of insanity, or no contest, which is the same thing as saying you're guilty. You have those options when you appear in court. So, and the other thing that is contained in the Constitution is a provision against a bill of attainder, or ex post facto law. So basically, you can't go back and say, well, let's deal with ex post facto law first. So basically, you can't go back and say, well, this basically something was illegal, and then go back and charge people that previously had committed that crime. So, like, for example, if you're going to declare that um, in reverse, then marijuana was illegal, and then go back and try to charge people for previous convictions. That doesn't necessarily work. Or same thing with drug laws. But a bill of attainder is basically where you would a blanket charge of people who were, like, saying, the British used to like to use King Henry and others. If you're against the king, or you make some political statement against the king, that automatically you be charged, or you're guilty of a crime without a trial. We don't do that in the United States. Very fearful of that, especially with the British tradition of doing that, where kings get too much power. So we can't go back and make laws in the past and charge people retroactively. It doesn't work. So these are provisions that are in the Constitution, and of course, the other one that's in the Constitution is that is end up appearing on here um, is trial by jury. The other things that we're going to look at much more extensively, so I'm just going to go through these rather quickly, are due process rights. Okay, our due process rights, near and dear to our hearts, and these will be we'll look at these more extensively in various activities. Fourth Amendment: search and seizures, reasonable with a probable cause and a warrant. Um, Probable cause, you might have a reason to believe that somebody is to be able to search them, but there has to be a probable cause. Usually a search is done with a warrant. There's different examples of traffic stops where you have different probable causes. Indictment by a grand jury, double jeopardy, self-incrimination. These are Fifth Amendment. These are contained in the Fifth Amendment. No double jeopardy. You have the right to not incriminate against yourself. We'll talk more about these extensively as we go along here. That's why I'm just going to go through these quickly. Sixth Amendment. These are the provisions of the Sixth Amendment, and remember, we talked about in the previous slide that the 14th Amendment makes these apply to the states now because of what the Supreme Court has made rulings on. You have the right to a speedy and public trial. Speedy, in the eyes of the American justice system, could be up to a year, but nonetheless, speedy trials. The right to be informed of the charges, that has to happen relatively quickly, 24 to 48 hours. Impartial jury, we'll hopefully get to talking about a little bit about how we pick an impartial jury if you decide to go to trial. Most cases don't. Witnesses, you're allowed to have witnesses in your favor, of course, assistance of counsel, and the right to confront your accusers. Bail, excessive bail. is not allowed, and that's the Eighth Amendment. You can't have a disproportionate amount of bail for something that's a small crime. Usually, bigger bails are for larger crimes like capital murder, etc. But you can't have the same type of bail for someone who's committed just a misdemeanor or small felony offense that may not be a danger to society. And then, of course, no cruel and unusual punishment. This is why we have sentencing guidelines that can fall under cruel and unusual punishment as well. 4 through 8, we will look at, and this is just a very high level overview. We will spend more time with each of these amendments and how they apply as we go along.